Penn State's visitor list for this weekend of official visits consists of about 20. Maybe there's a last second edition at the time of this recording that we're not going to know about. But out of the 20 visitors that have been planned for a while, 16 of them are already Penn State commits. So it's basically just a weekend where everybody's going to look around and say, like, well, we're all on board here. So there's 4 players that are uncommitted that are going to be visiting. And that's, like I said, plans change. There's conflicts. Schedules are going to, have to be adjusted. I get it. But I'm not entirely sure what Penn State was planning here, because we've talked about that before, where we say, well, Penn State gets strategic and they want, a certain amount of already prior commits to be there to almost encourage and say, hey, we're committed. We're bought in. Now it's your turn. But when it's 16 versus 4, right, I think it seems like it's a little bit of overkill.
I'm not sure what the reasoning for that was, but they probably want to get those kids settled, make sure they're lined up, and this is their first and their last visit, the whole 9 yards. Now, there might be a couple that take official visits. I don't know, but those things play themselves out. But some staffs do this. Clemson is having all their commits and their recruits coming in on this weekend. So every staff does it a little differently. Penn State won't have as many guys, I would assume, that are committed taking official visits the next few weekends, but I bet a lot of them are still back to help them recruit too. So maybe they wanted to spend more time with the committed guys. That's another possibility. There are some teams that do that.
Yeah.
But having a handful of kids not committed there, especially since, they need offensive tackles, they got a couple guys like that coming to campus, there's some benefit to having committed players in Happy Valley. So I'm sure James Franklin will figure it out, and they'll manage their time very, very well.
Now, as for the uncommitted players, let's really focus on them, because Penn State could generate 1 or maybe even 2 commitments from 4 of these uncommitted prospects. Like I said, I could go this Kevin Brown, Messiah Mickens. So maybe this does play into Penn State's favor, because there are so many verbal commitments that you're bound to get at least 1, maybe 2, right? So the 4 uncommitted prospects are Rodney Colton. And Brian, since you're based in the southern part of the country, he's from the Georgia area. You know this linebacker prospect fairly well. He's a solid 4-star, top 250 player. Penn State needs a third linebacker. They're looking for one. And I know Sincere Johnson put Penn State in his top 3, but you got to imagine maybe that's an Ohio State commitment. You still got to have a backup plan if you happen to. You'll take both if you end up getting Sincere Johnson to commit to you. Kosi Akpala out of Texas is another prospect that I've heard is very high up on Penn State's big board. He's from, like I said, he's from Texas, another top 300 player, one of the better linebackers, and somebody that Penn State is very much high on. Interior offensive lineman Marky Wahlberg from the Massachusetts area. So we go back there where Penn State identifies a really good, underrated prospect. And then Marlon Bright, a name that's been linked to Penn State for quite some time. He's from the New Jersey area. He's a raw, high-ceiling offensive tackle, insanely athletic, carries 6'6". He stands at 6'6", 270 pounds. That is who Penn State's actually projected to land a commitment from, first and foremost. But I could see maybe if this weekend goes well that Kosi Akpala might not be able to turn Penn State away after this official visit. So those are the 2 that I'm really circling for this weekend.
Let's start with the New Jersey prospect, just because he's an offensive lineman. After the way I saw Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State use their offensive line to bully their way into the Final Four last year, to me, it just proves once again why it's such a premium. And 8 of the first 32 picks this year in the NFL draft were offensive linemen. That's 25%. I don't care what you say. That just shows you the importance of the big fellas. So they need to do better in New Jersey. And when James Franklin got there and all the way through, he's been consistent at recruiting that state. He's a DePaul Catholic kid. Yeah. Marlon Bright's like one of those guys. I watched this film right before the show. Does he have some technical work to get through? Yeah, but offensive lineman, that's a lifelong learning skill.
You can teach that too.
Yeah. And he's a kid that he moves really well. He bends well. He's got really good length. I'm a little surprised he's not ranked higher, to be honest. His upside is extremely high, and he's not filled out yet, and he's not one of those kids that's all rocked up. Like, he's going to change his body. He'll end up being 6'6", 310 at whatever school he goes to. Prototypical offensive tackle prospect for the major P4 level. So That's very good news. I don't know much about the kid from Texas, the linebacker, but the way Penn State has recruited linebacker in the last 5 years, I'm not going to worry about it. They've done a great job of evaluating kids, whether it was a 3-star kid or a 5-star kid. Yeah. They've done just a tremendous job. And I know they changed coordinators, but Knowles is as good as it gets. So I'm not going to go against what he's thinking either. So if Penn State doesn't get anybody that they're really, really after, did they kind of come across this kid and they like him better than some other schools did? Who cares? Penn State understands linebacker recruiting, and they have for a long time. So either way, they will be fine there. As for Georgia, the player from Georgia you're talking about, he lives maybe an hour from me. Nice. Florida State was a school that was very hot and heavy with him, but I'm not buying Florida State getting big-time players right now. They got to prove it to me, and I know that's probably a mean way to say it, but Rodney Colton could go to a bunch of schools. I mean, Penn State would just seem like a more logical choice based on everything, but his list is kind of wild. Colorado, Ole Miss, Penn State, UCLA, there's a whole bunch of programs after him across the country. We'll see, but Penn State might be able to get him in. They've done this before where they knock a kid out with the official visit and they close it down. So that wouldn't shock me either because I don't think UGA is involved. If the Bulldogs are not involved for a Georgia kid, all bets are off. You got a lot better chance.
Yeah, he does have a pulled up his list right now. Georgia was, it seemed to be the leader in this recruitment, but if you say they backed off, then it's anybody's chance for Rodney Colton. So like I said, Akpala from Texas is very interesting because he's been fairly local. He's visited Texas a ton, Texas A&M, Houston, Baylor, right? It makes sense. So the fact that a school in Pennsylvania has his attention all the way side of the country. It's not like we look at Colton's recruitment, UCLA, Tennessee, Georgia. Okay. But Akpala, Texas. Oh, school from Pennsylvania. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. His list is really broad. I mean, Dion's in on him. Tennessee was in on him at one point. Georgia. With Georgia, you never know. Like, they're really picky about height and stuff. And he's not the tallest kid, so I'm a little surprised they offered him out of the gate, but his speed and athleticism fits what they're looking for. So maybe Georgia will get a visit, or maybe they'll get a visit down the line. They're always a threat for an in-state player, and he lives an hour and a half from Georgia's campus, maybe. So, yeah, they're a threat, but I would say overall that this is a kid that's probably more likely to leave the Peach State than to stay in it.